My name is Dade Butler. I'm the lead customer service agent with Page Optimizer Pro, and today we're going over how to understand your Page Optimizer Pro reports. First, before optimizing, I recommend reading the Best Practices sheet. The Best Practices sheet will enable you to get the most out of the tool. Once you have read the Best Practices sheet, select I acknowledge that I have read the above, and then click Submit. The first tab that you'll see once you click into a report will be the Content Brief tab. At the top of the Content Brief tab, you'll find your summary section. Your summary section outlines some pretty important things for you, such as your target keyword, your report ID, the time that report was created, your Content Brief optimization score, your current and target word count, as well as your page section recommendation. It's important to note that your current and your page section recommendations isn't taken into account when assigning you a Content Brief optimization score, though we still recommend trying to hit your target word count and your page section recommendation. The way that your Content Brief optimization score is calculated is via the important terms range at the top of each section. For each section, it wants you to use the important terms outlined in the important terms column, and once you have used those terms, your current count will increase, and the closer you are to the important terms range, the higher your score will be. Most of our users find that their page starts moving at an 80% score, though, if you can, we always recommend trying to hit the score of 100%. Now, let's learn how to read each section. For each section, you'll find a title in the upper left-hand corner, and next to it, a tooltip. These tooltips outline exactly which tag each one of these sections is looking at. For the search engine title, it's looking at the title tag. For the page title, it's looking at your H1. For your subheadings, it's looking at your H2s and H3s. And for your main content, it's looking at your paragraph, list, and table tags. To the right of that, you'll find your important terms range, your current count, and to the right of this, you'll find a radio dial. Using this, you can mark your sections as complete or incomplete. To the right of this, you'll find a notation button. To the right of that, you'll find a button that allows you to collapse the section, if you want it out of the way. And at the very bottom, you'll find a Download as .txt button. This allows you to download that individual section as a .txt file. Inside of the sections, you'll find the important terms column, the current usage column, and the target range column. For each of our terms, once we add it to our page, in the designated tag, our current usage will increase. Once our current usage increases, our current count increases, and then our score. For each one of our important terms, they'll have a target range. This is how much of that particular term the tool will count towards the current count. For that reason, I like to think of it as up to. For example, with our term here, AI-generated content, the tool is counting up to one use of this term in our title tag towards our score. It's important to note that no matter how many instances of this I add, because of the target range, my current count will always show 1. So, if I were to use, for example, 50 uses of the term AI-generated content, because of my target range, or what I like to say up to, it will count up to one use of that term towards the current count. Scrolling down, you may have noticed that multiple of our terms overlap. For example, we have AI-generated content, AI, content, and generated content. If we were to insert AI-generated content, it's important to note that the content brief does not double count. So, while AI-generated content contains the terms AI, content, and generated content, all three of these terms won't be counted, and only AI-generated content would be. It doesn't matter if it's by 1 character or 1,000. If you have the terms house and houses, so you add houses, only houses would be counted. Moving to the Compare Data tab, here you can find signal-specific recommendations on how to optimize your page. First, I always recommend clicking Show All Signals when on this tab, as this allows you to see your recommendations for every single signal and not just your high priority recommendations. When working with this tab, we recommend that you always do your increases first, as reducing is a very high risk, high reward strategy. Also important to note about the Compare Data tab, this tab will double count. So with our exact keyword, AI generated content, we can see in our Variations tab that we have AI, content, generated content as variations. So if we were to add our exact keyword to our meta title, that would count as 3 variations as well as the exact keyword. At the very top of the Compare Data tab, you'll find all competitor recommendations and based on your word count recommendations. Based on your word count is recommendations made on the assumption that you are outside of the plus or minus 20% recommended range of the target word count. To explain, if you had the target word count of 1,000 and your page had 500 words, that would be an instance where you might want to consider using the based on your word count recommendations. However, if you had a target of 1,000 and your page had 1,500, that would be another instance where you should consider using the based on your word count recommendations. The workflow for this tab is going to exact keywords, doing the increases in this tab, going to variations, doing the increases in this tab, going to LSI, doing the increases in this tab, and then, if you still haven't gotten the movement that you want, going back and restarting that workflow for reductions. We recommend when working with the Compare Data tab and the content brief that you do small batch changes. This allows you, if anything goes wrong, to go back and instantly fix the problem. Below this, you'll find the hide text recommendation. If you want a more data-forward view of this tab, you can always click Hide Text Recommendation. There's other information that we can glean from this tab. In the Comparing To menu, we can compare to our focus competitor recommendations, our max value recommendations, and our based on your word count recommendations. For focus competitors, this is recommendations made based solely on our focus competitors' data. You can see your focus competitors in the Dashboard tab highlighted in blue. For max values, this is recommendations based on the max possible value for each individual signal. For example, you can see that my recommendation here is to add one exact keyword of my meta title into the page. If one of my competitors had 1,000 total exact uses of my keyword in their meta title, then my max keyword recommendation would be to use 1,000 exact instances inside of my title. This is a very high risk, high reward strategy. I hope that this helped you understand the tool, and happy optimizing.